Now, let us cover the rounded corner tool. If you click on Create Rounded Corner, as the description says, this will sort of give you a corner or a rounded corner in between two lines, either by trimming or extending the lines, creating a circular arc. So let's see how this tool works. What you need to do is select two lines, as an example, this line and this line. And as you can see, the preview already gives you an arc depending on where you'd like to connect it with. So if we'd like to round off the corners of our rectangle, you can easily click on the two corners and it will create a rounded arc. You can edit the dimensions as discussed previously to suit your needs. So if you don't want a 4mm arc, this is the radius of the circular arc that we wish to create. You can easily type in the dimensions that you wish. Let's say we want a less severe rounded arc. We can put 2mm in and it adapts it to suit our needs. If we want a higher circular arc, you can type in 5 or even 6 and it automatically adjusts it to suit our preference. And we can do this across the whole rectangle in order to suit our needs. Now that we have covered some of the tools that we can use to create 2D sketches or geometry, how do we actually create 3D geometry from our sketches? This is a relatively easy process, but it has many caveats. The main tool that we use to create 3D geometry from a 2D sketch is the Pull tool. This allows you to literally pull the 2D sketch or 2D area into 3 dimensions. Let's see how this works with our current sketch over here. First off, you have to select the Pull tool. And now you can see that it's turned our 2D sketch into enclosed areas. Now, what we can do is we can select an area to model, or actually this is a bit complex for us to do. Let's go back into our curves. Let's select a more simple geometry. This is a good learning experience because it allows me to show you that you can actually, from the structured tree, you can easily delete certain areas or certain sketches that you do not wish to have. As an example, let's just keep the circle and we want to delete everything else. We can just select it in the structured tree and hit delete and it will remove it for us automatically. Now let's go back to our Pull tool. If you select Pull, as you can see, it creates a closed surface area. And if you actually select this closed surface area that we wish to extrude or pull, it gives us a yellow arrow. If you click and drag this yellow arrow, you can see that it actually extrudes this 2D sketch geometry into 3 dimensions. So this is how we can simply or basically create some 3D geometry from a 2D sketch. As is similar with 2D geometry, you can set the different parameters that you wish, such as the depth of the cylinder. If you want it to be 15 millimeters high, you can just type that in, click enter, and it will automatically adjust the figure to suit your needs. Now that we have covered how to create a basic sketch, some of the basic sketch tools, and how to create simple 3D geometry from your 2D sketch, it's time that you learn how do you actually save your project? How do you save your work? How do you load your work? And how do you go about all of this? Once you are happy with your 2D or 3D geometry and you wish to save it, you can either click the floppy disk icon, the save icon over here. You can use the shortcut key as per most programs, Ctrl S. You can go into File, Save, or Save As, and then you can define exactly where you wish to save your design. You can save it as, you can give it a name as per most programs. You can choose a file type that you wish to save it as. Once you click Save, it will export the model for you. Now, let's say that you actually want to close your model, or let's say you want to open a different model in SpaceClaim. How do you go about this? Well, if you just have a blank workspace, you can either click on the Open icon, you can use the short key Ctrl O, you can go into File, you can click Open. You also have a list of recent documents that you have. If you hover over these recent documents, you can get a preview giving you additional help to visualize what it is you have designed, if you have several different models, several different concepts, or if the naming convention that you have used is not descriptive enough. So you can either click on the recent documents, you can click open to browse all the different documents that you have. You can double click on your desktop or in the file location on the specific file that you have. You can even, if you wish, you can drag and drop your work into your workspace. So, as you can see, this is the file that we've saved previously. If you drag and drop it into your workspace, it will automatically load the file that you wish to work on. Now that we have covered some of the basics, let's discuss some more advanced or complicated tools. As an example, let's say we do not wish to create a cylinder. Let's say that we wish to create a sphere. How would we get started with this? Logically, we would assume that we'd use a circle, 2D geometry as a base for creating our sphere, similar to how we created the cylinder. However, you don't want to extrude the 2D circular geometry in a straight line. You wish to, however, revolve the circle around itself to create the sphere. So let's go back to our cylinder. We can easily press Ctrl Z, or in this case, because we've loaded it up, that doesn't work. However, in our previous session, if we still had it, we could have pressed Ctrl Z to undo the pull function. However, as I've mentioned, just because in this instance we've closed and reloaded the feature or geometry, it doesn't allow us to undo that feature just because it's lost the history of all those actions that we've completed. So let's go back into Sketch and quickly just redo our circular 2D geometry. So, similar to how we created the cylinder, let's go back into the pull tool. As we can see, if we simply select this face, it just gives us the option of pulling it vertically. However, what we have over here is a Revolve tool. And as the description implies, This allows us to actually rotate the 2D geometry to create a 3D geometry. But it also specifies that we need to define a straight line as the axis of rotation. If we go back into our sketch, we need to define a straight line. We could simply use the line tool to create a line for us to extrude this geometry. However, in the process of creating 3D geometry or more complicated models, it's normal to use construction lines. For this purpose, what is a construction line? A construction line is pretty much a reference geometry. So it is not a solid line. It does not have a physical entity or a body. It's just something you can select as reference geometry. So you cannot pull 3D geometry off of a 2D line, but you can define the construction line as an axis or a specific point for other processes. So in order to create a sphere, we need to revolve this circle around its central axis. We define the construction line through the center. We go back onto the Pull tool. We select the Revolve tool, and now it tells us to select an axis of rotation. In this instance, select your construction line. Now, select the face that you wish to rotate, which is this face. If you wish, you can rotate the view in order to give you a better view of what you're doing. And if you click and drag, you can see how you actually pull and extrude your 2D geometry into a circular sphere. Now, what if, as an example, our line is not through the center of the circle? Let's draw a new construction line off center over here on the side of the circle. What happens if we use the Revolve tool in this case? Let's select the line as our axis of rotation. Let's select the circular area as our target for the pull. And as you can see, the face is extruded around the axis of rotation. And this allows us to draw an analogy of a donut over here. This does not have to be solely used for circular features. It can also be used for any kind of features that you wish. As an example, what if we have, let's say, a little rectangle and another rectangle over here? Let's form this into a little T feature. What happens in this instance? Let's select the Revolve tool and the face to be revolved. Let's change the view a bit so you can clearly see what's going on. You can see. Sort of allows us to create an analogy of a pipe, but with a closed off center section. This is very useful to create complicated geometry very simply with just a few clicks and steps. So now I'd like you to play around with the Revolve and Pull tools and see how you can create similar geometry using different techniques. I'd like you to create a 20 millimeter diameter cylinder of 20 millimeters height using two methods. using the simple pull tool along an axis and using the Revolve tool around an axis. I will give you a hint. To create a cylinder using the simple pull tool, you can start with a 2D geometry of a circle. However, to create a cylinder using the Revolve tool, your 2D geometry has to be a bit different. Ideally, you would use a rectangle in this instance to create a cylinder. In summary, what we have covered in this course or in this lesson for week 1 is what is 3D printing, what you need to get started with 3D printing, which is a 3D model, how to get started in Ansys SpaceClaim, creating your 2D model from a 2D sketch, creating that 2D sketch itself, all the different tools and techniques that you can use to get started with your 2D sketches, and how to turn those 2D sketches into 3D geometry using the pull tool and the Revolve tool. Thank you and see you next week.